It tells me that we have a common designer. For instance, when you look at a chimpanzee, for instance, okay, there's a lot of different manifestations of a chimpanzee that look very similar to a human. Okay, very similar kind of hands. We have very similar demeanors in our eyes and the way we move our heads and things. But that doesn't bother me. That just tells me that we have a common creator, not a common ancestor.
Just so you know, I just looked up on the real quickly, and chimpanzees bury their dead. There's birds that bury the dead. They're giving the names of them here. The yellow-billed magpies.
That doesn't mean we came from them. It means that we have a common creator.
No, I'm just saying. You said you never seen animals bury the dead or anything.
Yeah, that is interesting. That's definitely interesting.
If you know anything about elephants, they mourn quite a long time over the dead.
And elephants also know, they get a sense when they are dying because they go to the burial ground, and once they reach the burial ground, they die. That's the trek that they make.
Yeah. And I understand what you're saying. God created the animals. Why? And at the same time, why can't the animals have certain, feelings?
Yeah. Well, they can feel. They can feel. For instance, dogs have very good instincts. They have very interesting. But see, I think that God has created animals to do similar things to accompany humans. I think they're there for our blessing. I don't think that they're there so we can look at it and scientifically try to explain away God, but rather we have this idea that we come from an animal. In fact, you tell kids they're animals, and what do? They take guns out and they stab each other, they kill each other because they're just acting like animals. But if you tell a person, look, you are made in God's image, you are made specifically to be separate from the animals, you are made to obey God and His Word and His commands, now they're held accountable for something. And that's my point I was making when you guys were mentioning those attributes. I was saying who cares in a very sarcastic way because I'm trying to make a point. The point is that we can say these things, we have these things, and some of those things are good. But until we learn the ontological end of it, it doesn't even make any sense to talk about it. For instance, what were just read me again. You don't have to go through the explanation, but just read me the three aspects there of life. What were the three?
There was a lot more than three, but
there are
26.
From A to
okay,
Z.
Well, just give me the first five.
One was to acknowledge your strengths, your talents, your abilities. The second was the blessings that are around you. Okay, and the third is control. The fact that we have no or little control over what somebody says. They will do or say whatever they do or say, but the only thing we have control over is our reaction.
Two more.
So here's my question to you guys. If we're not sharing the same brain through an evolutionary process, just let's go back to our evolutionary analogy. There are no purposes. And you know what? What Richard Dawkins says is correct. If we do come from the universe, there is no purpose. If we're evolved, you guys got to remember something about evolution. Evolution doesn't tell you how you ought to behave. All it does is it is a chemical processes over time. That's all the word means. It means change over time. Microevolution is certainly observable. We see microscopic changes happening within a species. That's not a problem. You're going to get a dog with long hair, short hair, curly hair, thick hair, but you're still going to get a dog. Nowhere in history can we observe a hippo producing a bird or a bird producing a hippo. That's what a macroevolution is. So you guys got to be very careful what you're diving into here. Now, you have to ask yourself the question, how do we know that God truly exists? Which God is He, and is there proof for it? That's what we're answering. Let's go back to our first human being. He can think like a human being, right? he's using the same logic and the same reason that me and you use. If we see something, we call it up food, and we eat it. That's called the law of identity. That doesn't change no matter how much time you put in it. If he knew what a spear was, he isn't going to call it a spear and not a spear at the same time in the same sense. That's the law of non-contradiction. But here's my question, and this is going to solve your answers. Are you ready? Did the first human being that was ever created use the laws of logic, or did he invent the laws of logic?
Well, again, one would say, is this innate knowledge? And then you would say, where did he learn it from?
Well, okay, yes, of course. Well, I'm talking about the first human. So there's nothing before the first human other than some random animal that wouldn't be able to use the laws of logic necessarily. I'm talking about the first Homo erectus human being that's able to have his first thought. I'm hungry, I want a banana. He's got to use at least 2 laws of logic in order to come up with that thought. How does he use it? Does he invent it? Or did it pre-exist him? Did he just use it?
I don't know. If it
Okay. Well, let's say he invented the laws of logic. Let's go the opposite way of. Okay,
go
ahead.
Much further, why can't we tie in the two of them together? Why can't creations?
Okay, I'm going to go there, Felix. I'm going to go there. I'm going to show you why it doesn't work.
Okay.
I'm going to show you why it doesn't work. Listen, let's say the situation is the first human being used the laws of logic. And number one, do you guys agree he would use the laws of logic? Of course, right? In order to think and to reason, you have to use the laws of logic. You have to reason. You have to use your brain, your mind, in order to come up with those thoughts. It wasn't merely human reaction or animal reaction. This is a real thought that a human being has. Let's say that he invented the laws of logic. Now, why doesn't that work? It doesn't work because in order for him to come up with the laws of logic, what did he have to presuppose? Come on, Mark, I know you know this. What did he have to presuppose? If he invented the laws of logic, that's a contradiction. Why? Because he would have to presuppose what?
That logic existed, what logic is.
There you go. In other words, in order for him to even think of what logic is, he had to use the laws of logic to invent it. So that doesn't even make any sense. Okay, so the only other explanation, considering...
It's like using the word that you're defining in the definition. You can't do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's just as a contradiction to say that I'm, whatever, just think of it. Here, I'm losing my thoughts here. Let's go to the second scenario. The second scenario is that he presupposed laws of logic. In other words, laws of logic pre-existed before this human being even existed. Now, why do I know that true? Because in order for there to be any thinking at all, something had to be the first uncaused first cause. Some mind. And it had to be outside of time, space, and matter. It had to be timeless. It had to be spaceless. It had to be immaterial. And it had to be a mind. Now, the only thing that fits that description is God himself. That's right. So there you go. That's one way you can tell that laws of logic that are immaterial, and you would not believe how many difficult debates there are where people simply are trying to debunk this concept. Well, not really, because human emotion and this and what do they say? Human reaction, human experience. Listen, in order for them to even be any thinking at all, it has to exist. In order for you to do science, okay, here's a very popular debate. Science solves everything. That's the debate. Science answers everything. Well, remember, science doesn't say anything, scientists do. And in order for you to interpret all data, there has to be a mind. So what I'm saying is, in order for you even to do science, what do you have to presuppose?
That science existed, or the premise of what you're basing your statements on existed.
Yeah,
before.
well, how do you interpret data? Mark, you're a teacher, right? How do you interpret data? What sort of things do you need to bring to us an experiment? You're in school, you're in front of your students, and you're going to do an experiment. How do you do an experiment?
That's why in science none of my experiments ever worked. It's true. When I
Come
when I
on,
taught,
just think about it. Just think about it. Oh, what are you going to say? You're going to say something?
I was going to say that. I mean, my history, my math, my English lessons were terrific. My science lessons, when I did an experiment,
It never worked.
It never worked out, and I told the kids, I said, trust me, this is what's supposed to happen, but it never does for me. That... Could you pose the question again, please? I confused myself.
Okay, listen. That's okay. Listen, let's go in Mark's classroom. We are now in the imaginary mind of Mark's head. Whoa, Mark, your mind. Let's get out of your mind for a minute. Man, I don't know. That was crazy. That's crazy. Okay. All right, listen. So we're in Mark's head. We're in his classroom. And Mark's looking at his class. And Mark, what are you telling the students to bring to this experiment? I don't care what kind of experiment it is. Just name me some things you need at an experiment.
Well, you're bringing your own experience, first of all, into an experiment.
Okay. Well, but what are some of the physical
logic.
Things that we need?
You're bringing reason and logic.
Oh, you need logic.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So if your reason and logic were different than the students, would you all come up with the same conclusion?
No, we wouldn't.
Okay, so in other words, your reason and logic have to be the same as the students. Interesting. What are some other things you have to bring to your science experiment? What are some other things you bring to an experiment?
You talking about physical things or?
Yeah, sure. Name anything at all. Anything you want to say. You need bubblers and beakers?
Well, if it's a chemistry experiment, yes.
All right. What about pens and paper?
Well, that goes without saying. You have to be able to record your results.
Okay. So now you got your bubblers and beakers and your pens and pencils. Now, Mark, you said something very important. You said, well, you got to bring logic and reason. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But what are some other things, some other immaterial things that we need to bring? How about we need to bring
experience?
Experience. How about morality? Do we need to bring morality to the science experiment?
Not necessarily.
Now, just think about that, Mark. I'm going to let you think and chew on that one. Hold on, Mark. I'm going to let you chew on that one.
Morality.
I'm going to let you think about that. I'm going to let you think about that. Let's just think about it. Do you need to bring morality to a science experiment?
Depends what the experiment is.
Okay. Well, let's just say it's
if it's just
I don't know.
If it's just a chemical reaction, Chad, you don't need morality. It's you mix chemical A with chemical B, and what's the result? It has nothing to do with morality. It has nothing to do with right or wrong as far as how you would behave. Okay?
Are you sure about that, Mark?
Well, he looks like he is.
Yeah.
He's got the eyes for it. Okay, well, let me suggest something to you. Could you lie on a science experiment?
I used to do it all the time.
He used to do it all the time. But, well, technically not.
No, because In fact, this is,
No.
if anything else,
Could someone lie? Could
if
somebody
anything else,
sabotage?
in chemistry.